Okay, we are live for a Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show. Excited to be back. Looking forward to connecting and finding out. Keeping an eye, just summarizing everything as well as talking about what could possibly be. My name is Mike, and of course, I have Mr. Mario here. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Mike. And you?
I am excellent. Excited to connect with you. It's Friday. Lots of things happen this week. A lot of things we can project and forecast out into the future, but ultimately, we all know that's about some type of correction. But how are things in the UK? What is going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, quite a bit this week and for the last few weeks, I'd say. But the two important points to focus maybe on is the Bank of England. They raised rates yesterday unexpectedly, a measly 0.15%. But they were down at 0.1%. So now we're at 0.25%. And no one was expecting a rate hike, especially with Omicron. They've scared the public into submission here. Unfortunately, people are canceling Christmas parties. They're canceling pub lunches, Christmas lunches. Here in the UK, probably like in the US, people at work, they organize lunches or dinners for Christmas. But that's all been canceled. And but the Bank of England still raised rates because they said they're concerned about inflation, which came out at over 5%, the CPI. The day before they decided, which was yesterday, they decided. I personally think it's okay, give them a little bit of credit. At least they did something. They didn't just keep talking like the Fed does, and they actually acted. But and it looks like they're planning to maybe do a few more of these, but I don't think they can get back up to even 1%. The last time around, the highest rate we had since the 08 crisis, when they started raising rates again after that, the highest was 0.75. So I think they took the opportunity just to show that they care about fighting it, but I don't think they can. Already business groups are complaining. And the other important thing in the UK is political. We had what's called a by-election here last night, and the MP for that constituency, he had resigned earlier because of a corruption scandal, which Boris Johnson had to backtrack on. So, and he, in the by-election, the Conservatives lost that seat, I think, for the first time since 1830. So it was like one of the safest Tory seats, and they lost. So there is a lot of questions going on about how capable Boris Johnson is to remain as prime minister. And here in the UK, the system works that his party could actually call for a vote of no confidence on him and install a new leader who'd become prime minister without having a general election. So that's out there. I think he's trying to detract from that. He did take the blame for this this by-election result, and but it doesn't bode well. But yeah, that's what's going on. And I think, unfortunately, the economy here is not going to do well. This is another nail in the coffin, especially for hospitality and travel and everything else. I think from tonight, you won't be able to go to France, for example. The French have blocked people because of Omicron. So a lot of the travel agents are going to lose out. So that's what's going on here in terms of the most important developments, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then I also saw something about let me put this on the screen here about the passport situation is beginning to become mainstream news over there, because you won't be able to do certain things as far as I guess large sporting events and of course nightclubs. So whether or not the people wanted it or not, they pushed it. And it was supposed to be something that was, I guess, the people were supposed to have a say in it. I think they didn't they have some type of
they had a vote in Parliament. I forgot about that. There was a vote in Parliament a few days ago. And unfortunately, the Labour Party is supposed to be the opposition. They all voted for that. But
Overwhelmingly.
there
Yeah.
were about 100 Tories or conservatives who voted against it, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So the worrying thing about this passport is that you might say, oh, it's just for nightclubs and sporting events, but that's how it started out in Italy this summer. And then it expanded to the whole economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, I'm gutted because I go to the nightclub almost every week.
Mario in the club. All right. But let's jump right into some more stories. And so I thanks for giving us the lay of the land, because it's always good to find out what's happening on your side as well as what's happening over here. But let's jump into, I'm curious to get your thoughts. I want to just touch on this real quick. Overall global consensus is that central banks have decided that now is the time to begin raising rates. And so as of now, I got the little list of all the central banks, and it looks like I think 12 within the last 3 months have all decided to raise rates, from Russia to Czech to South Africa, New Zealand, Bank of Korea, Poland, you name it. And of course, Britain as of yesterday, and a couple others from yesterday, but Turkey decided to drop theirs still. So they're going counter to what the rest of the world is doing. Very interesting.
Yeah, Turkey had raised rates earlier this year, though. I just have to say that. Yeah.
And then speaking of which, I saw somebody in a comment mention Turkey, and it looks like they've stopped all trading as the currency situation continues to pick up. So lots of events are happening, but it looks like all this current tapering talk, as well as interest rate hike, is leading us towards something. And I think my suspicion is that they're going to try to push this narrative that the recovery was going fine, growth was happening. And of course, GDP and all the things we're going to touch on eventually was looking phenomenal. But then again, either Omicron or some type of external event, i.e., I think it's going to be some type of cyber event, because all the pieces of the puzzle are right there. But and then you factor in, I think it is Morgan Stanley rather, warns that the Fed's turbo taper will trigger market chaos over the next 3 to 4 months. Will we even get through spring with all this narrative of tapering and dialing back, liquidity at the time where things are tight? What do you think?
The tapering that was doubled in this meeting, FOMC, they instead of doing 15, they're going to do 30 billion. Jay Powell said that by the middle of March, the tapering should be finished, and then the balance sheet will probably be around 9 trillion, and it will probably stay there for a long time. They won't unwind that balance sheet for years, I think. But from now to mid-March, a lot can happen, especially in the kind of environment the world is, where politicians and political leaders will spout anything out there to scare people, and it almost seems like they want to do it on purpose. Stop the economy, grind them to a halt. And we're not even looking now at the supply chain again. All this is disrupting the supply chain, because you're going to get a lot of people, especially here, calling in and saying, oh, I can't come to work because I tested positive. They're really pushing these tests. And you were telling me about the tests. Maybe you can elaborate on that and how that's going, what's happening in the States in terms of that too.
Yeah. So let me see. I might have shared something on Twitter where somebody, I'm not sure who it was, but it's been recirculated a lot. But the person who put it out there was mentioning how the testing threshold for the PCR test has been elevated back up to 40, whatever. I'm not even sure whatever type of measurement they have.
It was around 45, wasn't it? Cycles or something.
Yeah, so it's been elevated up, and the person was questioning, like, why right now? And so, of course, that leads into the fact that, because of this new variant, people didn't buy into it initially. It wasn't enough initial response of fear the way they needed. So now everything is testing positive. And I was saying here in the U.S., I haven't really been paying much attention to the actual news about it. But in the sports world, where I do pay attention to, a lot of the NFL teams are missing a lot of their rosters, and a lot of NBA teams are missing a lot of their players, because all of a sudden now everybody's positive, it seems. And so that definitely helps with the fear of this is something serious. We need to jump on top of this, stay ahead of this. And it puts them in a position to control the narrative as well as push their agenda. And in the EU, as we're talking about with the passport situation, that's really becoming very prominent in each country. Over here, it's state by state, and a lot of states have already said it's not going to happen. But my suspicion is that they can't get to that next phase of this monetary heist unless those passports are out there even more, so that it can be the denominator between the people's financial matters as well as their ability to control this narrative, because they're going to need a way to get funds to people's hands. And I think that digital ID and passport situation plays a key role in that. But yeah, more fear because it sells, and of course profits.
Yeah.
You know, the people who invested in this making a lot of funds in this. But yeah,
in terms of sports, I mean, I follow golf. I haven't heard much about people testing positive in golf, and right now the golf season is pretty much ended.
Yeah,
it's like in a hiatus. But I've noticed that in tennis, though, you've got the Australian Open in January, which is the first Grand Slam event of 2022, and Novak Djokovic. He's like one of the best players in the world.
Number 1 or 2. Yeah, he said
he's won many. He's going for a record Australian Open title, but I don't think he's going to go because he hasn't taken the thing. And I saw a headline the other day that there's some other players that are not going to be eligible to go to Australia because they're so strict. And I think that's a good thing for that. There are some athletes out there who are standing up, and I think it's up to the individual to decide whether they want this medical, treatment procedure. But and I don't think it should be forced on anyone. And it's unfortunate that Australia is doing that. Well, it's going to be their loss. I don't think he's going to be playing the Australian Open.
Yeah. So speaking of which, here's a thought. So feel free to chime in. We want to make sure we include you guys. So ask a question, share a thought. We'll definitely try to jump on it because we're trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle to try to make sense of things and basically keep everybody on their toes. But here's one from Timo. It says, in my opinion, central banks are not ready for a market crash. I do not think a market crash will happen anytime soon. The stock market will probably go up even more. So anything is possible. That's definitely a likelihood. They want the markets to go up, forever, probably. But I don't think that's definitely not possible, given the fact that there's too many dominoes that are collapsing right now. Evergrande, I mean, you name it, it can't go up forever. So there has to be a day of reckoning. It's just a matter of when. But then again, do you want to gamble and do you want to be on that train heading up, or definitely when it comes crashing down?
Well, yeah, I've heard some people say that you could get another 5-10% up in the stock market.
Yeah,
but we are near levels that are unprecedented, even compared to the metrics of the dot-com bubble in 1929, and also we have a lot of margin debt, almost $1 trillion in margin debt, which is huge. And at the same time, we're seeing a lot of the I saw a headline, I think you sent to me, billionaires have sold like 30 billion worth of stock. And also in corporate insiders, they've sold about 70 billion worth of stock as well. So yeah, you could get another 5-10%, but then you could get like a really sharp haircut. There's the old saying, you go up the escalator and down the elevator in the markets.
Yeah, and it won't be comfortable. It will not be comfortable whatsoever, because a lot of people's lives are dependent upon being able to get returns from the equity markets for their retirement, and that's where things will not be able. That was just not something that can last forever, man. But,
I think that's the only things that's keeping the pension funds and the retirement funds going are the capital gains, because they're not getting much income from the bond market, which is supposed to, historically, I think a lot of the pension funds promise like 8% income a year. But when you have rates, government bond yields like below 2, they used to be 5, 6, 7, and corporate bonds were like 10, 11. But now everything is like below 4 or 3. So how are they making up for that? Well, the bubble, stock market bubble, and that's why the Fed had to save the day last year when when the markets crashed like almost 40% in a matter of weeks in March.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of which, the bond market. So here's an article here. Global bond fund sees the biggest outflow since early April 2020. And
Hmm.
so people are running. People, people are running. And so the question is, what are they running to? Of course, they're not going to tell us that, they're getting into gold, and the mainstream media will tell us they're going to Bitcoin. What's your take on this, my friend? Where are people looking for safety? What are they running from?
Yeah, I mean, I saw someone on Twitter, I think, mention that, and they said, "Oh, they should go all in into Bitcoin," and I replied and I said, "Oh yes," and they should go buy Bitcoin 10-to-1 leveraged. I deleted that though, but it was supposed to be sarcastic, and some people, it's difficult for people to detect sarcasm online like that, so I
Yeah, some
deleted
people
it.
take it
But
serious. They'll take it
I
serious.
mean,
Think it's a fact.
it's difficult to say where people are going. I mean, I could tell them where they might want to go,
Mhm.
but they don't think probably like we do.
Yeah,
If you look at some relative analysis charts, like from Tavi Costa, you probably heard of Tavi Costa.
yeah,
He shows that hard assets, tangible assets, are still the most undervalued in the last 50 years versus bonds and stocks. So
yeah.
I would probably try to go a little bit into hard assets, into miners as well.
Mhm.
I interviewed a guy from BMG Group the other day, Nick Barishev. I don't agree with what he said. He said that you only go into miners after the main stock market crashes.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure about that, because today, for example, we've got the Dow down 450 points,
Mhm.
but my miners are doing really well today. So I think it's not very. I'm not like saying I guarantee that the miners are going to do well, but I think they could, especially if gold and silver and all hard assets remain elevated.
Yeah. And speaking of Tavi, here is a little graph that he's showing us
Oh
in
yeah,
comparison
that's the
of
one. So that's
commodities
what
to
I've
equity
been showing
ratio.
for the, yeah. And
So this
I
is
think
yeah,
you could also put this against bonds as well. It would look similar
yeah,
because we've got a bond bubble.
yeah. And so just this visual right here tells you how low the commodity space is compared to the overvaluations of the equity ratio. So there must be a day of reckoning. It must be. There must
Oh
be in
yeah.
the future. So it's just a matter of timing. But yet, once again, I don't play with time just because it'll never be on your side. So definitely get your weight up. You know what to do. Most people here are awake and aware, but it's just the rest of the world who has no clue. So it looks like we got some questions. Let's jump on a couple of questions here. Ralph said, check out LBP. Let me see here. Okay, it
Low
says,
blood
yep,
pressure.
it says, who is buying all these insider dumps is the question. I got my suspicions, but what would you say, Mario?
I'm not sure if the Fed's buying it. It could be,
Hmm.
but I think it's the unfortunately the retail investors.
Yeah, you think so?
A lot of times, they're the ones who get in at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's probably those institutions that by law have to buy certain things just because that's a part of their, strategies that's, given to them by the government. Or worst case scenario, go Rob Kirby style, talk, the plunge protection team, because all
Yeah,
those
yeah,
unknown trillions out there.
yeah. But I think the plunge protection team, they go into the market to try to change the sentiments.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if they hold these assets long term.
Hmm.
But as for the pension funds that are obligated to have like a 60-40 stock to bond
Right.
ratio,
Yeah.
yeah, they could be buying because they have to. But
Yeah.
who do they hold those funds for? Well, it's for the retail, for people who have their money into the pensions, 401ks. So I don't know if everyone in the U.S. manages their pension funds. They're probably not the defined benefit
Hmm.
or company
Yeah.
pension funds. That's probably uh, run by the pension fund managers, and a lot of times these fund managers, they don't care uh, about uh, the real return of those funds. They only care that they beat the other fund manager. You see,
Right.
so if the stock market drops 30%, and most pension fund managers lose 30%, but you, let's say, Mike, pension fund manager, lose 25%, you're going to be considered a star because you didn't lose as much.
Yeah.
But you're still losing 25. So I think that's probably why there's still people buying it.
Yeah.
And maybe, yeah, but that's probably why the markets seem a bit toppish now. I noticed after the FOMC meeting, markets rallied strongly. But yesterday and today, they're having a bit of trouble, especially, well, yesterday was the NASDAQ. NASDAQ dropped a lot yesterday. Today, the Dow is dropping 440 points here, 1.2%.
Yeah, so something is troubling those markets a little bit, and so on our side here, okay, I can't help but not talk about the. It looks like the debt ceiling situation has been kicked down the can, so we're going to 31 trillion. Debt clock will keep turning over, and it's
Yeah.
it's supposedly until November or after the midterms next year, and then we're back at it again, but. 2 trillion here, and then looks like the Build Back Better plan was supposed to be signed around Christmas, like so sometime this week, next week. But it looks like they're jawboning that as well, saying it may not pass. But we got 2 trillion here, possible 2 trillion next year. This is all heading into 2022. What could go wrong? What could go wrong with all this debt?
Yeah, and you showed that chart earlier about all the countries that have raised rates this year.
Yeah.
But they're mostly emerging market countries, and they don't have as much debt as the U.S. has.
Right.
So those countries can afford to raise rates. And I would say Great Britain, Bank of England can't afford to raise rates that much because we have a lot of debt here too.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not creating as much and spending as much as the U.S. But the U.S. Congress and the presidents, the executive, they seem to think they can keep doing this with no consequence. And
right.
And I think that's another reason why I think Morgan Stanley could be right, because they don't see the Fed really being able to raise rates in 2022. While Goldman Sachs, on the other side, they see 7 rate hikes next year. I mean,
so the too big to fail banking, good guy, bad guy narrative, that they all know that something's coming down. So we will see, but it's very interesting. So, man, this is going to be a heck of a 2022. I think this might be the year where we really see some true fireworks. But on another front, outside of what the U.S. is talking about doing, it looks like China and Russia are at it again. So they want to do a new independent financial infrastructure setup, and so it's very interesting how that took place on the same day that the Fed decided to talk about their tapering and stuff like that. But this went under the radar for the most part. But it's a part of the game plan. What are your thoughts on this, man?
Yeah, I spoke about that yesterday in my video, and I think it's very significant news. Russia actually announced that they've decided to build their own financial system. So my video yesterday, I entitled it, Russia and China declare independence from the dollar. Does that mean they will never have to use the dollar again? Probably not if they trade amongst themselves.
Right.
But of course, if they trade with some other countries that they don't have an agreement with, they might have to still use the dollar. But I think it's significant. And I think Brazil is going to get involved because Putin invited the Brazilian president to meet in Moscow.
Yeah.
It's either going to be January or February. And I saw that Brazil as well is going to kick out the IMF from Brazil. They have an office in Brazil, the IMF, and they're going to be gone by June next year. The excuse there is that they haven't been forecasting the Brazilian economy well enough. But I think it's got a lot more to do maybe with Brazil not abandoning the dollar, but joining that club too.
Right.
There's going to be more clubs out there. That's maybe the way to think of it. There's not going to be just one golf club around. There's going to be several, which is a good thing. People can join whichever club they want.
Right, I agree. And as the petrodollar system, they're deliberately shutting it down themselves with that whole carbon emissions, criteria that they're trying to throw out there. So that right there to me was a sign that it's time to turn the tide towards the other side of this paradigm shift. And then of course the BRICS. The BRICS looks like the BRICS are back in town. And so with all the accumulation of gold by all those nations primarily, so something is about to give. And in my little video, I always talked about the moment the light switch comes on, where the world is forced to recognize that China and Russia, they have officially announced that they want to move on because they will have the solution. They will offer the world the solution to the dollar at some point.
Yeah.
And the only way they can lure in countries, especially the countries that are not able to protect themselves from the petrodollar war-mongering crowd, is to basically have some gold on hand so that you can join the club at when it's time to sit on the table.
Yeah, and gold is important because it gives each of these countries' currency a little more credibility.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah,
So that if Brazil deals with Myanmar, for example, who's joined, I think China now did an agreement with China or Russia, I forgot which one.
Yeah.
Brazil will know that Myanmar's currency has some gold backing, so they will accept their currency and vice versa.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think even the head of the biggest oil company in Russia, Rosneft, he said that the dollar is losing a lot of its credibility because they're creating so many dollar claims through QE as well.
Right. And so the dollar, or the Federal Reserve note in the system itself, is the tool that they're using. They're using that tool to execute their last hoorah before they themselves look to, that's a part of the whole Great Reset agenda. And so with the World Economic Forum doing what they're doing, like they have put themselves in charge of executing this world shift towards, the digital version of everything. So I'm looking at more and more countries now are ready to roll out their pilots. We got a lot of African countries, some European countries, and they're using certain protocols. And it looks like Stellar is being used heavily in Africa to help build infrastructure for these CBDCs. So we kind of see the game plan. Now it's a matter of will they be able to do this in time? Because if the system does plunge and that stuff is not ready, or we're told it's not ready, it makes it hard to roll it out and put it into people's hands and have that sense of credibility and trust amongst the people. And that's what I think might come up a little short on that. So, but it is what it is. Let's get some questions, man. Feel free to throw out some questions, and we'll definitely love to touch on them. So Pablo Pina says Ukraine CBDC uses Stellar, right? So Stellar is a part of the game plan, and XRP.
Stellar Lumens.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the same guys was responsible for helping develop XRP. So XRP is still in litigation, and that's been going on forever. So I'm wondering what are they trying to accomplish with that, or slow down rather. But we'll find out in time. But then to talk a little bit more on China and Russia relationships real quick, I had a couple more articles on the show. Here's an article: China-Russia collaboration in space poses challenges to the West. So that's something they're working on. And then I came across another article that says China and Russia sign agreement to build joint base on the moon. So it looks like China and Russia got a lot of plans, and the West is not included.
I think that base on the moon is a little bit of wishful thinking.
But and another thing, I saw that something about the metaverse. I think Boeing is looking to build planes in the metaverse. Like, I seriously saw that.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, man.
Well, Billy wants to get into the metaverse.
Really, with the Billy coin or something?
No, he wants to go for walks in the metaverse.
You want to add an avatar in there? All right, let's see what questions we got out here. It says, let me see, go back here. I saw some thoughts out here. So yeah, one thing we did not touch on just yet is the actual activity in the silver and the metals market, man. So as of right now, as we're speaking, we're in the green. So
yeah, I mean, silver's pretty much unchanged now, but that's normal because during U.S. hours they always seem to come after it. But we got up to like 2270 almost earlier.
Yeah,
and the encouraging thing is that we're seeing the Dow down 450, but gold and silver are holding up quite well.
Yeah,
and the miners, as I said, are doing quite well. I have some Newmont mining, and Newmont was up like 8% yesterday. It really rallied in the last few hours, which is quite positive, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, the gold sentiment and the miner sentiment was really bad
Hmm.
just before the FOMC announcement, and after the FOMC announcement,
Yeah.
right after, gold dipped to like 1752, and
Hmm.
now we're like $50 higher. So I think it's looking better. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I hate to make these forecasts, but I think we've seen a short-term bottom for gold and silver, and it
Yeah.
was on FOMC day.
We will see. We will see. But definitely, it's
I
so
bought
I see.
I bought some half dollars yesterday.
Yeah.
Some yeah, 64 Kennedy half dollars.
Okay.
Just a
Okay.
few. I went to the local coin dealer. There's not many coin dealers in the UK.
Yeah.
There are bullion dealers, but like traditional coin dealers where you can buy uh, collector's coins as well. There's not
Yeah.
many of them, but the one I go to, he's still around. And
Yeah.
but he had some 1 ounce silver coins, and for one, it was like £30, which is like a big premium.
Yeah.
Uh, and I said, "Whoa, how come so expensive?" And he said, "Well, there's not many of them around." And he said, I will
Scarcity.
do it if you buy 10, though, I'll do it for 25.
Hmm.
But you look at the price of silver in the UK, it's £17. So there is VAT on it.
Yeah.
So, but still quite a lot, the premium that we're paying here.
Yeah. So let's get to some I see some questions out here. Here's something from Economic Prepper. It says, how many rate hikes for the Fed next year? What's your guess? What would you say? Would they actually be able to get to one or
Uh,
two or what?
Two, I think. Yeah, two.
Two. Two. I'll say possibly one. And then around that time frame, well before then, there's going to be a lot of volatility in the markets, and there's going to be some pushback and the possibility of some type of event, whether it be the variant
Yeah,
responsible for it or some type of cyber event. Like, I really think that that's going to be something that is being played out there. So I'll say one
yeah.
and keep it at
Maybe
that.
we could touch upon GDP because that the GDP, because Jay Powell,
Hmm.
in his press conference, he few times he said, "Yeah, our economy is really strong,"
Yeah.
and the Fed, they see GDP at 6% in
Hmm.
2021, and then 4% next year. And I wanted to show the viewers that um, yes, the GDP number looks good, but if you
Yeah.
look at the way they calculate GDP, they add government spending to GDP there at the top there. GDP
Hmm.
is the sum of consumption, that's private sector consumption, investment, and then they add government spending. And the government can only spend when they tax the private sector.
Yeah.
And do you know what the budget deficit for the tax year, fiscal year ending in September 2021 was? It was like over 12%. So the government's overspent by 12% of GDP.
Hmm.
So if you eliminate that overspending and you go to a balanced budget, you're going
Hmm.
to take out 12% of GDP growth, according to that thing. So actually, private economy shrunk by 6%. So it's all government financed, all the
Hmm.
growth.
Yeah.
Next year, the deficit is going to be about 7.5%, and they see 4% GDP growth. So it's still going to be negative for the private economy, and
Yeah.
that's why we're seeing rising prices, because government is doing all the spending and no one's producing anything extra in the private economy. Uh, a lot of it, of course, is coming from abroad, and people are importing from China, but
Yeah.
imports takes away from GDP as well. So you could be right about the Fed. They might not be able to raise rates at all
Yeah.
because the economy is not really as strong as people think.
Right. They're lying to us about everything. And just globally, the world's still in need of dollars. And so if they're raising, they got a lot of zombie companies out there that will be forced to be paying back in slightly higher. And all it takes is just a little bit more of an increase, which puts more of a burden on them to repay their debts. And everybody's in debt in a sense. So it's going to be something. It's going to be a lot of dominoes falling over here. And then we're not even talking about what's happening out in China with Evergrande and all those other companies going belly up. So it's going to be a lot of stuff coming our way pretty soon, but it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. All right, so let's jump to a couple more questions. Let me see here. I saw something. I see something about a troll out here.
A troll.
So I'll put them on pause. Yeah, it says, Ryan says, do you think the end of the system will be when China and Russia create their new system and or a war with China and Russia? Great question. What do you think, Mario?
Well, they already announced a new system yesterday, so it might have been kicked off already. The end of the system.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if there will be a war because in the past wars have been fought to change society. And why do I say that? Well, there's a really good interview between G. Edward Griffin and Norman Dodd. It was conducted in the 1980s. Norman Dodd, he investigated all the tax-free foundations in the 50s. And he found that the Carnegie Institute for International Peace they asked those questions in 1908. How can we change the way Americans think? And they said their conclusion was that barring an event like a war where we could change people, the way people think very quickly, it would take too long. So I already think they are conducting a war to change the way people think. And that started last year in March with what's going on. It's a war because the wars are usually to change us, the public.
Right.
So,
and to pull off their agenda.
Yeah,
it's a cover up to pull off their agenda.
And I think Russia and China, they're playing along with the same agenda.
Right.
And all this talk about war with China and Ukraine and is all theater, I think, by the powers that be.
Yeah. Rolf says World War I was to destroy the monarchies in Europe.
Yeah, partly, and also to take Europe of sound money, and also it was to create the Federal Reserve as well, because the Federal Reserve helped finance that war as well.
Yeah. So Rod B, I see your thought there. So other than just so as I'm streaming right now, I'm talking, so I try to glance and see what's going on. So I did put somebody on timeout, but it says, so his words, did they change your view of Mike and Mario? How will you win him over by silencing him and not being aware of his complaints? So I didn't get a chance to read any of his thoughts. So I just saw some of the people in the community that I do trust, and they're saying there's a troll out there. So I just believe it and go.
Well, I didn't see anything here because yeah, I don't have access to some of the stuff.
So I put somebody on timeout, but I try not to worry about it. So join me again for a live stream, and I'll definitely get to your thoughts and questions. So but anyway, let's keep it moving. Let me see.
Yeah, and the other thing about World War I, if I could add, one of the objectives was, I think, to bring in the League of Nations.
Yeah.
The problem was that the Americans didn't buy into the League of Nations. So yeah, I think the U.S. government and the Senate, the Congress never approved it.
Yeah,
because a lot of people thought it would lead to world government. So then they had to bring in World War II, and then the U.S. did accept the United Nations. So some people argue it's because of that as well. You kill off, and killing off the European monarchies makes sense because if you have world government, the monarchies lose all their power, right? Yeah. So they probably wouldn't have wanted a League of Nations, the kings and queens of Europe.
Yeah, very true. And so now they're trying to do away with the real world and take us towards a virtual world.
Yeah, and also they want. We already see that the UN is kind of running things. The WHO is part of the UN. IMF, World Bank is all the same.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I saw an article talking about Russia is now, making some demands on what they want to see in order to, I guess, dial back their escalation that the West is telling us about. And it has to do with, NATO stop fueling things, stop putting people on our borders and stuff like that, and we'll dial back too. But of course, I think that's a part of the plan to cause that type of distraction. So we'll see. But anyway, so we're about 40 minutes. So let's get ready to dial back, Mario. Let's talk about projections heading forward. So we got about 2 more weeks of this year. Anything you anticipating or seeing before we head into 2022? Anything?
Unfortunately, I think they're gonna dial up the fear in the next few weeks. They're talking here in the UK of possible lockdowns after the new year. In terms of economics, I think I think they're trying to maybe engineer some kind of slowdown a little bit so they don't have to raise rates or taper as much as possible, the way you think. And no, apart from that, personally, I just trying to try to stay clear-headed and not be scared by our leaders, because they've scared a lot of people here in the UK the last couple of weeks. I told you before we came online that I went into town today. I walked into town, and it's completely different now. A couple of weeks ago, you didn't see too many people wearing coverings. Now it's almost everyone, and you can sense kind of the fear out there.
Yeah. So heading into the rest of this new year, man, enjoy this Christmas season, with family and friends. So of course, Fauci's here talking about you might want to make sure you question everybody before they come into your house, make sure they participated, and if not, it's fear, as you just mentioned. Enjoy the Christmas season, man. We know the time or the time we were given for this and what the season is all about, supposedly. But other than that, enjoy it, man. Enjoy this year. We're able to get through it for those that are still here, and get ready for an exciting 2022 and be on the right side of history. And of course, we know that the banking situation is what they're trying to cover up. So I did a little video talking about how cash is a threat. Cash squeeze is underway now. So you might want to have a little something extra outside in case things happen to get cut off. And of course, continue to stack while prices is the cheapest that they've ever been in human history in relation to everything else that they're trying to prop up. So I think you will be rewarded with your patience. So don't give up the good fight. Continue to get your weight up. Stay prayed up is my motto.
Good. Sounds good.
All right. Well, everybody be blessed, be safe, and enjoy your weekend. And of course, hit the thumbs up button, Manico64 on YouTube, Rethinking a Dollar, wherever we're at. Be blessed. See you guys later. Peace.
Peace.